Um, so how did the brothers know not to leave? Because it seems like he is turning to I don't know, his assistant and says clear the room, but maybe he
Oh,
says it in
okay.
Egyptian.
Right.
And somehow they understand from context
Hmm.
that
Not
Yosef
that.
wants just them left.
Okay. All right. That's a small point. Sorry.
Yeah,
And
no.
Manasseh was supposed to be staying there as his translator.
Potentially his son, who knew both Hebrew and Egyptian, served as the translator, but I'm not sure if that was necessary at this point, because now Yosef switches, from Egyptian to Hebrew when he reveals himself. Vayitain et kolo bebechi. So he raises his voice and begins to wail. Vayishmu Mitzrayim vayishma Beit Paro, and everybody could hear this wail. It was a powerful loud and intense kind of wailing. Vayomer Yosef el Achav, and here's where he speaks in Hebrew, and it says, Ani Yosef ha'od avichai. He speaks in the Mama Lashon. He speaks in the language they understand, and he reveals himself. And these 5 words are really like the key that solves the mystery of the last 22 years, and where all the puzzle pieces finally fit together. They didn't expect this, but once it was revealed, they now understood why, that he put him through, why Yosef put all the brothers through all of those tests and all of that drama, with the bags and the cup in Binyamin's bag, right? The lo yuchlu ha'achav la'anot bo. But after Yosef revealed himself, they were just, their jaws dropped and they were speechless. They couldn't respond. They were just silent. And here we have a little bit of an editorialized, or narration, a narrator's insertion, ki nivhalu mipanav, that the reason they couldn't answer is because they were shocked. They were dumbfounded. And or nivhalu could mean that they were scared of him, right?
Could be.
So you can imagine why that might be the case. And he sees in their faces that they are shell shocked. And so he's speaking to them from that position where he perceives what's going on beneath the surface because they're unable to articulate what's going on for them verbally. So he addresses it himself when he says in Pasuk 5, and this is what I want to dig or delve into a little bit more deeply. Ve'ata al te'atzvu ve'al yichar be'einechem ki mechartem oti heina. So he says, don't be afraid, or don't be atzav is like don't be sad, or don't be distressed. Ve'al yichar be'einechem, and don't be angry. Ki mechartem oti heina, because you sold me here, ki lemichya shalchani Elokim lefanechem. Because the reason you sold me here was to be able to provide food. It was to save life that Hashem sent me, here to Egypt. So he gives a reason to explain away why the brothers did what they did in such a way that they would perhaps no longer be afraid that Yosef would take revenge on what had happened to him. Because most basically, the concern that the brothers probably had when they took a step back after hearing Yosef's revelation was, he's going to get back at us. Now he has the upper hand and he can do with us whatever he wants. And we did something pretty cruel to him decades back, and he probably hasn't forgot it. And so Yosef calms that concern down by saying the violation of brotherhood that was committed when you sold me as a slave or threw me into a pit, I've come to terms with that. I'm at peace with that because I see that it wasn't anything but the hand of God in orchestrating this life-saving infrastructure for me to build up a stock pile of food to save the Egyptian country and surrounding countries during the 7 years of famine. So,
Rabbi,
yeah.
What Daniel had asked, I also had been thinking, if when he said everyone out, and he spoke in Egyptian, how was he initially talking to his brothers, in what language, in front of everyone?
The Midrash
Yeah, the
says
interpreter.
that he has a translator. As
Thank you.
John.
That's what you were saying. Okay.
That was part of how he held his cover.
Yeah.
Because if an Egyptian, politician was speaking Hebrew, it would be a little suspect.
Yeah, I'd say so.
If Menashe was the translator, did he know who these people were?
It's a good question. We don't know. I mean, it would seem that there would be some obvious questions about why would Menashe know Hebrew? Who taught him Hebrew?
Exactly.
Right? If this is, and if they were to learn that Menashe was Yosef's son, right, then they might be more suspect. So,
Right.
they're all good questions. And the Midrash tries to fill in, the gap in terms of how they could communicate across languages by saying that there was an interpreter, who happened to be Menashe, but presumably they held his identity status, hidden.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, so what I want to appreciate is how Yosef anticipates his brother's response. He sees that they are physically backing away and that they're speechless. But then when he speaks to them in terms of what they should not be, by saying to them, Al te'atzvu ve'al yichar be'enechem. He says, don't be pained and don't be angry. So those are really two different kinds of emotions, right? The first one, pain, refers to a constellation of referential negative emotions that relate to the wrongdoing of the sale, whether it's regret, shame, anxiety, or sadness. That's what pain is alluding is al te'atzvu. But then when he says v'al yichar beinechem and don't be angry, the nature of the anger is quite different. Anger is rooted in ego, while regret and sadness and pain are in the opposite place, not the ego, but in the broken spirit. So how could Yosef think that the brothers would be both sad or pained and angry if those are two, very different kinds of emotions? Being pained is like being remorseful, and being angry is anything but being remorseful.
Yeah, the angry one is a tricky one because it doesn't seem to fit. Like, who would they be angry at? Yosef for still being alive?
Maybe at themselves.
Could be.
Indeed, the angry one is the one that the commentaries jump on in terms of trying to understand what is he what is he referring to?
Yeah.
But what about anger at the fact that he put them through all of that and hadn't revealed himself sooner?
So, right, if the anger was at Yosef, then it could be, how come you tortured us by putting us through this, roller coaster ride of going back and forth, sending the money for the provisions back in the bag, making us look like thieves, and then, doing this whole scheme with bringing Binyamin down there. And it was a crazy set of experiences that he subjected them to. So maybe they resented all of that because he seemed to be playing with them, right? So that would definitely be justified anger against Yosef. And you added, Janice, that it was maybe anger against themselves. It was self-directed anger.
Yeah.
I think that's another great possibility. We're going to look at two commentaries who give different approaches than those two, but those are excellent starting points. So before we go to those two commentators, we're going to read the Malbim and the Ha'emek Davar. We're going to start with the Malbim, and then go to the Netziv, the Ha'emek Davar. But just one piece that this book that we've been going through makes, as we sort of try to understand the emotions at play in this narrative. The notion of anger is generally something that surfaces when goals are obstructed, and there is little that is more anger-inducing, than having our goals thwarted. And so the brothers selling Yosef as a slave, so that he wouldn't give rise to greatness, yet that act precipitated his greatness. So there is the possibility that that this author gives to the anger is that they are angry not at Yosef and not at themselves, but at the reality that their efforts to subvert Yosef and thwart his dreams from being realized are the same actions that caused his brother to cause their brother to become great. It's very relatable in the sense of, like, when do we experience anger? When we're trying to achieve a goal and something gets in the way of that objective. And even more so if what we're trying to do to achieve that goal actually generates the opposite of that objective.
On the other hand, it ended up in a situation where he's in a position to save their lives.
Correct.
Then with food.
But the reason that he ended up there initially is because they were trying to dethrone Yosef.
No, that's true. That's true.
And now he achieved what they were trying to avoid.
Yeah, but I figure maybe they've gotten 22 years older and wiser, and realize, that's this is not so bad.
Yeah, so that's, I think, what Yosef is trying to calm them down with, by saying, don't be angry, because when you sold me, right, it wasn't you selling me, it was really God selling me so that I could do all of this to save all these people. Right? So don't be angry at what ended up happening, because it was really for the best.
Right.
So let's look at the Malbim, and then we'll go back to the Netziv, and to see these two approaches to this this phrase of the speech of Yosef. So the third source, we're gonna start with the Malbim. I'll read and translate, and then summarize. So the Malbim, usually the way that he starts is he asks a few questions and then he gives some answers. So She'elot lama kafal al ta'atzvu be'al yichar be'enechem. So he asks the question of, why does Yosef identify two things that the brothers should not be, that they shouldn't be remorseful and they shouldn't be angry. Ve'amar shenit lachayot lachem lepleta gdola. Right, and he says again that his purpose was to be a source of life for them and for everybody. So Tchila Amar Asher Machartem Oti, V'achar Kach Amar Lo Atem Shalachtem Oti, Uma Shetziba Yomru Alavi Ve'echut Advarim. Okay, so we're going to put that aside for a moment, and we're going to focus on the first part of his question, which is about the two different verbs that are used in Yosef's speech to his brothers here. So with regard to them regretting the act of selling, he says, don't be sad. So the Malbim says that Yosef is referring to two different emotions that they are likely feeling. The first one is remorse over the sale, and the second one is about the hatred that they had of Yosef growing up, that they did not want him to be raised to greatness. And to that, he is saying, don't be angry that I became the moon, or I became the stalk that everybody bowed down to, or I became the star that all the other stars bowed down to. So this is essentially Yosef is addressing what the brothers might have felt, but the reason that he says two different verbs here is because Yosef was not sure what his brothers were feeling, so he addressed both possibilities. Either that they feel regret for what they had done to him, or anger that their plan failed. So both of those are included in Yosef's response, or in Yosef's address to his brothers. So that's the Malbim's approach, that it was that he wasn't sure which one his brothers were going to be feeling, and it could be that they were actually feeling both, and so that's why he shares both with them. Okay, so let's go to the Netziv now, who
Excuse me, just another point is it could have been that some brothers were feeling one way and some feeling the other way. So he addressed them both.
Okay, Baruch Shekivant, which means you just stole the thunder. That's exactly what the Netziv says. Right? The Netziv says that there were multiple brothers, and the different brothers had different emotions based on their involvement with what took place. Right? You might recall that Reuven was trying to save his brother, so perhaps he felt regret that he was unable to do so.
I think Janie read the Netziv ahead just so she could show off.
She must have.
Yeah. I understand it totally.
No, but maybe he was realizing that had he saved him, the whole country of Egypt and their whole family would not have had food during the famine 22 years later.
Well, that's what Yosef is trying to convince them of. Yeah. But when this news surfaces about Yosef's identity, it triggers some childhood trauma, right? Because now they're thinking about themselves as teenagers when this all went down 22 years earlier. And so what the Netziv says, I'll just read here the one line about why he gives different sort of ways of calming them down. Because it's what he thought. Some among the brothers were actually very remorseful about what had happened, and he wanted to speak to them, to saying, don't regret what you did, because it was in God's hands, and so you should just appreciate that we were all cogs in a wheel, and we were all part of a much greater story that was unfolding, that was beyond us. And then he also says, don't be angry, because some of the brothers, gam hayom asher atem haya hatzedek ela she haskilu la'asot. Right, there were some brothers who even today might have been upset that Yosef was able to rise to power and to accomplish the dreams that he had set off to accomplish.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I would have thought also that Joseph might have said, don't be afraid, because I could have seen the brothers being quite afraid that he would take retribution on them.
Right. So I think that might be I think the pshat of Kiniv Halumi Panav, right? When when the narrator describes their behavior of backing away and not speaking after Yosef's revelation, it's because they were afraid of him,
Okay.
right? But then when he addresses them and says, you know, that's where he addresses the fear. He says, get closer to me and I'll show you that I'm not going to hurt you.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Right. So the fear of retribution, I think, is addressed through physical proximity when he says, like, let's hug each other and I'll prove to you that I don't have a knife. I'm not gonna take my, I'm not gonna take revenge. So
I've also heard he opened his robe to show he had been circumcised.
Yep. So he showed he was an insider, right? That's what the Midrash says, that he was one of them, to prove to them that he wasn't just making this up, but that's actually who he was, right? So after he convinces them of who he was and that they shouldn't be afraid of retribution, then he speaks to their emotions of don't regret what you did and don't be angry at this situation, right? And so either it was like the Malbim, which is that he wasn't sure what they were feeling and that he anticipated either one of those, or that he thought that some of the brothers probably felt sad and were pained over what they did, and others felt angry that they failed to accomplish what they set out to do. So there is another possibility beyond the Netziv and beyond the Malbim, and here I'm going to read a paragraph from our book here, which is that one of the core principles of DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, is that while it may be difficult, people can hold two seemingly opposite perspectives at the same time. We often run into emotional difficulties when we engage in an all or nothing thinking. Once we accept that our emotions are complex and often contradictory, we can learn to accept these competing perspectives and work on changing to improve our situation. Perhaps based on this, our original assumption was wrong. Maybe the brothers could feel both remorse and anger. They could simultaneously regret what they did to Yosef and be frustrated that their plan didn't work out. By acknowledging both the moral sentiments of regret and the darker parts of their anger, they would be better able to move forward with repentance and reconciliation. While sometimes our emotions are clear and straightforward, at other points they are confusing and contradictory. If we allow ourselves to identify and accept competing emotions, we will be better able to both understand and manage our emotional experiences. So here we have the underpinnings of one of the sort of theories of therapy, which is that of dialectical behavioral therapy, which sees that the human psyche is able to have a cocktail of emotions simultaneously. And that it's not an either or an or, it's not being remorseful or being angry. You can actually bounce back and forth between them and have them at the same time as well. And that if we can accept the complexity of our emotional selves, then we're actually better able to manage them. And that's ultimately what dialectical behavioral therapy is about. It's about affirming and validating that we can be both angry and sad at the same time. We can be both, happy and upset at the same time, and that we need our behavior to be more sort of consistent and more stable. But in terms of our emotions, it is healthy for us to be having a tension between two things at the same time. And so if we can give some space for our emotions to do that and not feel angst about needing to have clarity of feeling one way or feeling the other, then we can actually manage that tension better by seeing it for what it is and then focus on a behavioral pattern which is healthier. So the way that we can sort of understand, if we put that theory back into this scene here, Yosef is trying to validate to them, you're probably feeling a whole set of different emotions right now, and that's okay. Because the past, few decades, I'm sure, had different periods of emotions, and that all of that is now resurfacing now that you are aware of who I am.
Mhm.
And so he is actually seeing them for who they are, what's going on beneath the surface. And that ultimately is a tactic, a strategy for moving forward with reconciliation. He's saying, I don't need you to just feel joy or relief. I can see you having all different kinds of emotions, but don't let those emotions get in the way of the behavior of us coming back together as a family unit. Now, the sad thing is that it doesn't really work, because after Yaakov dies, the brothers then retreat from Yosef again. And Yosef sees that they are afraid of Yosef taking revenge after their father is gone, because perhaps that's the only thing that held him back.
Right.
And so, as much as Yosef attempts this, very thoughtful effort to reunite with his brothers, it doesn't actually seem to accomplish what he intended it to do, because they still do have this anger and this remorse and this fear of him, right? Oftentimes when you tell someone, don't be angry, that's because you know that they are angry and that there's legitimate reasons for their anger, right? Don't be sad, right? It never works to tell somebody don't be sad. Oftentimes it just makes them feel more frustrated that they are sad.
But he went ahead and got them nice land to live on. That was an act of caring.
He attempted to, he invited Yaakov down to Egypt. He attempted to give them their own source of parnasa and their own independence in Goshen, for sure. He did all the behaviors that were necessary to create reconciliation between them. But because of all of the estrangement over the course of the majority of their lives, the reconciliation never really fully took place.
Was Binyamin involved with the other 10 brothers plotting against Yosef?
No.
The text is ambiguous, because we know that he is born,
Right.
pretty late, right? Several years after Yosef. And we actually just had a shir on this topic with Rabbi Saltzman on Shabbos, because it seems like Yosef wants to have Binyamin come to Egypt so that he can fulfill all of the dreams. And the second dream was about the 11 stars bowing down to him. And without Binyamin there couldn't be that 11th, brother. And so, according to that version, it seems like Binyamin was somehow, involved in the schemes, which is why he needed to come down in order to be, in some ways a subject of Yosef. But the text just says Echav. It just says that the brothers were in Dotaina when Yosef came to visit them. And we don't know if Binyamin was there. Was he too young to be there? Was he too young to play a role, even if he was there? We don't know. But Yosef seems to need to reconcile with him as well. So it could be that he was at least aware of what happened.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I hope definitely during this current moment, we all feel a variety of different emotions, and we have to give ourselves permission to feel various things at once, even as we strive to have our behaviors be healthy and be consistent and appropriate. It's okay for the psyche to be both angry and sad, and also have moments of joy during a time of war. And so that's part of what this dialectical behavioral therapy is all about, is to appreciate that contradictory emotions is something that is psychologically healthy, and that we can even see that in the way that Yosef validates different kinds of emotions in the brothers happening at the same time.
That's how I feel now, because
Oh.
I was so frustrated. I couldn't find the Zoom link for half an hour. So I wrote to Sandy. Usually she puts it on the announcement, but it wasn't, just says password. I know the password, but there was no link to the Zoom. But I'm happy that at least I heard 15 minutes.
But you should be angry. You should be angry with Sandy.
Yeah.
I wrote to her. I wasn't angry. I just said,
Oh, okay.
the link is not there. And I didn't know how to connect. I tried to go to the site.
Well, I'm glad you made it on for the end part.
Yeah.
But we have been using the same Zoom link for the past 3 years. So it should be, just going forward, it's the same one that was sent out in all other communications.
That's what I was trying to go. I went back and back and back, and I couldn't find. And
yeah, okay.
And I erased my emails. I don't keep them all. So
I don't even try to use a link anymore. I just know the passcode for the meeting, and I have it written down at home in case I forget. So I just put that.
Passcode, it's easy. It's the link that you need.
that's
No. I'm saying the number for the Zoom.
Yeah.
No, I just
we
wanted
meeting
to
next
spend
Tuesday?
time. Yeah. I'm just connected to what the rabbi said, that it's okay to be both. And by the way, I wrote a paper on the story of Yosef, and I saw 5 different stories
Within the narrative.
within the story. Yes.
Yeah.
I did it with Professor Abush, Tzvi Abush. I took a
Uh-huh.
course with him, and that was my paper. So it
I'd
was
love
very
to,
interesting to
please
figure
share
out.
it. I'd love to read
5
it.
stories of Yosef.
5 different stories. Yes.
I also find the literary character of this narrative so rich, and I also wrote some papers on it in graduate school about Yosef's attempts to undo the favoritism that was going back 3 generations and that he inherited. And my thesis was all about how he tries to create brothers that actually get along, and that's what this parsha is really all about. And he has mixed results. So it works to an extent, because the first Jewish family is created where there's nobody that's excluded from the brachot. That's what we see in Parshat Vayechi, that Yaakov is able to give the blessings to every one of his children, and there's not anybody cut out like there was with Yishmael and Esav. But the emotional connection between Yosef and his brothers is still fraught at the end of the story. So that's part of what we analyzed today.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I'm going
Okay,
to
wish everyone
What about next week? Are we meeting next week?
I think next week we're going to take a break because my kids are off from school. And so I'm going to try to do some activities with them on Tuesday. So let's take a break next week, and then we'll continue the week after.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
And easy fast Friday.
Okay, bye.
Oh, thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, I'm going to send them a note.
Yes, 10 בטבת. Okay. שבוע
Okay.
טוב. Shalom.
Shalom.
All right.
How are you?
Take
Everyone?
care. Yes. Both of you.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I finally have the time to come, and I was looking for the Zoom. I couldn't find it.
Yeah. It's frustrating, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to see you, Esther.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah.
Now I'll keep the Zoom link.
Good.
Yes. Bye.
Oh, Esther, this Sunday morning, are you working?
No, I'm not working, but I know I got a message. Why?
No, it's Monday morning.
Monday
Eight
morning?
Chaim is having a special breakfast to support the IDF.
Ah,
And we're having a live Zoom call from a captain of the IDF. He's a spokesman. His name is Tomer Kershel. And it's a breakfast and it's a fundraiser. It's $25. It's 10 o'clock, and the money will go to helmets and vests that
Oh,
the
good.
military need.
Wow, they're very expensive, the helmets and
Yes.
yeah. Now the problem now, well, if the money goes to Israel and they do it, that's one thing. But if they buy here and send it, yesterday there was a whole thing that was shipped from England, and now the government didn't have enough money to pay the taxes for it. So they want the people to pay the taxes, but I don't know what the solution. I know that was the problem, but maybe they will find.
No, we have a contact in Israel, so the money would go to him, and he's got an
And he will
organization
buy.
that buys it for the
I
IDF.
see. Ah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, everything
Right.
is fine.
Yes.
On the Zoom of
Yes, it-
somewhere needs recording, so I guess we have to
We
leave.
better go. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Esther.
Bye.